The fans will know Dave's mother Dorothy as Dave's mom from many appearances on the show, but his father Harry will be less familiar. Dave adored his dad for his sense of humor, but sadly, Harry never saw his son become a comedy icon. The family endured a scare when Harry suffered a sudden heart attack at just 36 years old. He survived, but this brush with death hit young Dave hard. He developed a crippling fear of his father's mortality. Harry Letterman would suffer a fatal heart attack in 1973 at just 57. Letterman's first show business gig came as a talk show host for a local radio station, but it didn't last long. The station soon fired Dave for his irreverent treatment of classical music. Fresh off his firing, he landed a job at a local TV station as a weatherman. Finally, David Letterman stepped in front of a camera and into people's homes, and instantly audiences could tell something about him was different. This gap-toothed 20-something soon became notorious for his bizarre weather reports. He'd predict hailstones the size of canned hams. He'd report the weather for cities that don't exist. His bizarre broadcasts baffled audiences, but one thing was certain: he was never boring. He had talent, but the Midwest was not the place for him. He just needed someone to push him to take the next step. He and his college sweetheart Michelle Cook married in 1968. She convinced him they had to head west if he was going to get into comedy. Together, the pair of them packed up everything they owned into a pickup truck and set their sights on L.A. The trip would change Letterman's life forever. It was the start of his rise to fame, but it also spilled doom for his relationship. Dave had to work his way up the Hollywood ladder, and that meant working on more shows than you could shake a stick at. From the Starland Vocal Band show to Mork and Mindy, Letterman showed up pretty much everywhere. But he was still a nobody. He needed someone to give him a leg up, and that's what he got, from one of the most famous people on the planet. I did do some jokes about you and Alan Ludden. That's true. In the 1970s, no one was bigger than Johnny Carson, and The Tonight Show was the ultimate destination for any up-and-coming young comedian. Nice house bed, Jim. With so many random TV appearances, it was only a matter of time before the show's scouts discovered Letterman. Thank you very much. Good night, mate. If Carson liked you, it would open all kinds of doors in the comedy industry, and Johnny loved Letterman. Now I'm living in Los Angeles, actually, Hollywood, you know, and a lot of people. Dave became a regular and even landed the coveted guest host gig on several occasions. But while his career was taking off, his personal life was in turmoil. His marriage to Michelle slowly fell apart at the seams, and the pair divorced in 1977. Applause. David Letterman, the late-night legend, finally got his own show in 1980, and it aired first thing in the morning. Though critics loved the David Letterman show, audiences couldn't be bothered to get out of bed for it. It lasted just 4 months before NBC canned it. 2 years later, he got his second chance with Late Night with David Letterman, airing in the coveted post-Tonight Show time slot. Applause. B.B. King is here. Finally, Letterman had an audience primed and ready for him, and Late Night quickly became a staple. Letterman began a relationship with fellow comedian Merrill Markoe. She was a brilliant joke writer and spent years as the head writer and producer on Late Night. Many critics credit her as the driving force behind the show's surreal humor. But unfortunately, Letterman and Markoe worked better professionally than personally. Letterman doesn't exactly have the best record when it comes to fidelity, and it started while he was with Markoe. The pair eventually broke up in 1988, a full 2 years after Letterman started a relationship with his current wife, Regina Lascaux. While his life behind the scenes was a total mess, Late Night quickly became a huge hit. Young fans loved Letterman's bizarre, sarcastic, and often outright unpleasant persona. But while audiences were having the time of their lives, Letterman's style quickly started making him some powerful enemies. He frequently found himself getting into arguments with his guests live on air. This led to now legendarily awkward interviews with the likes of Madonna, Shirley MacLaine, and Cher. One of the darkest chapters of Letterman's career began in 1988. Margaret Mary Ray, a woman suffering from schizophrenia, began stalking him. Over a period of several years, authorities caught Ray trespassing at Letterman's home 8 times. All the while, Letterman had been making light of his predicament, frequently making quips about his stalker on his show. But he was sure to keep Ray's name out of the papers. He said in an interview that he had sympathized with her and continually declined to press charges. He hoped she could get the help she needed, but sadly, her story has a tragic ending. She eventually took her own life in 1998, and Letterman publicly expressed his sympathy. Most people assumed that Letterman was a shoo-in to take over for Johnny Carson when he finally retired from The Tonight Show. But in 1992, NBC shocked everyone when they gave The Tonight Show to Jay Leno instead. After a decade of success, Letterman bailed on NBC and headed over to CBS to helm The Late Show with David Letterman. The move also made him one of the best-paid stars on television. In January 2000, a routine checkup led to Dave being rushed into emergency quintuple bypass surgery, and CBS had to improvise for the next several weeks. After airing reruns at first, they eventually brought back a one-time staple of late-night guest hosts. Then, about a month after his surgery, Letterman returned to the stage for one of the most memorable shows of his career, as he brought out almost his entire medical team to thank them for saving his life. It's impossible to talk about David Letterman without going into his many celebrity feuds. For decades, one of the most infamous was with Oprah Winfrey. The pair hated each other for 16 years after she appeared on Late Night in 1989. She was one of those guests who despised Letterman's interview style, and she later said being on his show felt so uncomfortable that she didn't want to experience it again. Letterman and Oprah finally met again in 2005 when she returned to his show. The moment fans were really waiting for was in 2013 when Letterman went on Oprah's show and they talked about and settled their infamous feud. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factor8 member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. All right, okay, now. The show is nearly over. Yeah, we have to say goodbye now. Dave could make light of almost any dark moment in his career, from feuds to threats to stalkers. One moment, however, was too disturbing for even Dave to joke about. In 2005, authorities uncovered a plot to kidnap Letterman's 16-month-old son and ransom him for $5 million. Even worse, the perpetrator knew Letterman. His name was Kelly Frank, a house painter who'd worked at Letterman's home. Thankfully, Frank's plan was foiled before anything could come of it, but it was a chilling reminder of the price of fame. Letterman has been sober for nearly 40 years, but only because he learned of alcohol's brutal effects the hard way. He started drinking when he was just 13, and it slowly began to take over his life. He claims that by the end, he spent 80% of his time under the influence. He was headed down a dark path, but he came to his senses and quit before he could cause any real damage to himself or others. After his first failed marriage and his contentious relationship with Merrill Markoe, Letterman's relationship with Regina Lasco seems like a long-awaited success story. They've been together for almost 35 years, but this was no fairy tale. Letterman was hiding secrets, and eventually they were going to come out. The October 1, 2009 episode of The Late Show was one of the most infamous moments in late-night history. I have had sex with women who work for me on the show. Now. Dave stepped out on stage and revealed that someone was blackmailing him. An anonymous person threatened to reveal that Letterman had had several extramarital relationships with his female employees, something he confirmed to be true. Shortly before the episode in question, Letterman found a package in his car. It revealed his affairs and said the blackmailer would write a tell-all book if Letterman didn't pony up to the tune of $2 million. Instead, Dave went straight to the authorities and personally took part in a sting operation to catch the culprit. It turns out someone from Letterman's own network had betrayed him. The blackmailer turned out to be Joe Halderman, a producer on the CBS show 48 Hours. He pleaded guilty to all charges and served 6 months in jail, plus probation and community service. His plan had blown up in his face, but even if he didn't get the money, Letterman still had to deal with the fallout. After years of sneaking around, he finally admitted to having several affairs with women who worked on his show. His most scandalous affair was with his longtime personal assistant, Stephanie Burkett. That's where the details of Letterman's cheating start to get twisted. His breakup with Meryl Marco wasn't exactly friendly, but after years of silence between them, he called her in the mid-2000s to come do some on-camera bits for the show. But in reality, he wanted Marco to write bits for a young intern named Stephanie Burkett. Marco wouldn't realize what was really happening until much later. Letterman had brought his ex-girlfriend back to write jokes for his mistress. The affair with Burkett was eventually what sealed Letterman's fate. Burkett didn't only work on The Late Show, she had another gig on 48 Hours. In fact, she actually lived with Joe Halderman in the months leading up to the blackmail attempt. Halderman had access to Burkett's personal diary and emails, and he used them to try and extort Letterman. Dave was unsurprisingly miserable after his affairs came to light, but at least he managed to make life miserable for everyone around him, too. After every taping, Letterman would gather all of his writers to go over every aspect of the show they'd just finished. Then he'd bring writers and producers back to his office to just talk for hours on end. One staff member described it as a hostage situation, all because the prospect of going home and facing his wife terrified him. On one of the most infamous episodes of Late Night, Crispin Glover appeared in character while promoting a movie. Crispin Glover is a bit of a weird guy, and Letterman was clearly unprepared for his bizarre antics. Eventually, Dave just walked off the set of his own show, right then and there. Safe to say, it wasn't his finest moment. Perhaps one of Letterman's most infamous feuds was with fitness guru Richard Simmons. Simmons appeared on Late Night and Late Show all the time, and the pair seemed to have a close relationship. But that all crashed and burned after an appearance in 2000. Simmons was dressed as a turkey, and Letterman sprayed him in the face with a fire extinguisher. Unfortunately, the results were disastrous. Simmons suffers from severe asthma, and the blast from the fire extinguisher resulted in a brutal asthma attack. Letterman made light of the incident, and Simmons was furious. He didn't come back on the show for over 6 years afterward. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. If you want to see and who we cover next, join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. God bless everybody. Thank you.